Imagine this. You are born in a city already surrounded by enemy guns. Your first memories are the thunder of cannons on the horizon. You learn to walk in streets scarred by shrapnel. You play in courtyards shadowed by sandbags and barricades. By the time you are a teenager, the siege is so old that nobody remembers the first day it began. And by the time you are grown, lines already etching your face, the siege finally ends. That was the reality of Ceuta, a Spanish fortress on the tip of North Africa that endured one of the longest sieges in human history. Not weeks, not months, but 21 years. This is the story of the siege that lasted a generation. Ceuta was no ordinary colonial outpost. It sat like a sentinel between two worlds. To the east, the blue sweep of the Mediterranean. To the west, the restless Atlantic Ocean. Across the narrow Strait of Gibraltar lay Spain, its mountains visible on clear days. A tantalizing reminder that the homeland was close yet sometimes impossibly far. Ceuta's value wasn't in gold or grain. It was control. Whoever held it could watch, tax, or choke the ships that threaded the narrow strait. It was a key small in size, but immense in consequence. For Spain, Ceuta was pride, a foothold carved into Africa. For Morocco, it was an open wound, a stone fortress of foreigners planted in their land. And for Sultan Moulay Ismail ibn Sharif, it was an insult he would dedicate decades of his reign to erasing. Moulay Ismail was one of the most formidable rulers Morocco ever produced. To his friends, he was a visionary. To his enemies, a storm given human form. He was a man of contradictions, a patron of architecture and art, yet also known for brutal punishments and iron rule. He unified Morocco, crushed rebels, and built an army unlike any other, the Black Guard. Tens of thousands of African soldiers loyal only to him, drilled, disciplined, and feared. By the 1690s, his ambition was clear: to secure Morocco's coasts and push back the foreign enclaves that scarred them. And Ceuta? To him, Ceuta was not just a fortress. It was a scar from the past, a permanent reminder of European encroachment. He did not plan a raid. He did not plan a blockade of months. He planned to strangle Ceuta into surrender, no matter how long it took. In early 1694, scouts and messengers flowed from Meccans to the northern coast, but a home for decades. By late spring, the hills above Ceuta darkened with banners. Columns of Moroccan infantry, cavalry, and gunners marched into position, their dust clouds rising against the glare of the sun. Farmers in the surrounding countryside fled for gates. From the ramparts, Spanish sentries looked down at the sight of siege lines being dug. Not shallow trenches for a raid, but earthworks, redoubts, and batteries meant to last. The Sultan's army had not come for a raid. They had come to stay. Late August. At dawn, Moroccan cannons opened fire. Stone and iron shots smashed into ramparts, splintered rooftops, and sent plumes of dust into the sky. The Spanish answered immediately. Their guns roared smoke across the harbor, tearing through siege lines and scattering. Advancing infantry. For days the thunder continued. But when the dust settled, both sides realized the truth. This would not end quickly. From the first days, Morocco controlled the land. Nothing moved in or out. Ceuta's lifeline was the sea. Ships from Cadiz and Malaga became the city's salvation. They carried grain, salted cod, oil, and gunpowder. Every arrival was a festival. Every delay, a crisis. When storms closed the strait, bread shrank to crumbs. Soldiers gave children pieces of their rations. Wealthy families bartered jewelry for sacks of flour. Markets still opened each morning, but their stalls reflected scarcity. Prices swung wildly depending on whether sales had appeared on the horizon. The smell of communal kitchens lingered in the narrow streets. Wood smoke mixed with the ever-present tang of gunpowder. Church bells still tolled for Mass, though their sound often blended with the thud of Moroccan guns. Children still played in alleys, but their games mimicked sieges and raids, imitating the soldiers they saw on the walls. For Ceuta's people, siege was not an event. It was life itself. On the hills beyond Ceuta, Moroccan siege camps transformed into towns. Trenches grew deeper, reinforced with stone. Guns were mounted in redoubts that resembled small fortresses. Soldiers planted barley and beans near their tents. They dug wells, built barracks of mud and stone. Children were born in the camps, their first memories the sight of Ceuta's walls in the distance. Merchants followed the army, selling bread, cloth, coffee, and even luxuries like sweet pastries to officers. Weddings were celebrated under canvas. Families grew as war lingered. Even here, life and war blurred together. In the quiet nights, voices carried across the no-man's land. Insults thrown, songs exchanged, sometimes small trades. A loaf of bread for a pouch of tobacco. A flask of wine for a handful of dates. Moments of humanity in a war that seemed endless. In 1701, Europe erupted into the War of the Spanish Succession. Suddenly, Ceuta was just one front among many. Reinforcements grew scarce. Moroccan forces sensed weakness. In 1704, their guns battered a single wall for 3 days. On the 4th, infantry surged forward with ladders. The breach became a slaughterhouse. Muskets roared. Pikes thrust. Swords clashed in the smoke. For hours the battle seesawed, until by nightfall the breach was piled with bodies and Ceutas. Walls held firm. Engineers worked by torchlight. Stones slick with seawater used to wash away blood, so masons could rebuild the ramparts. It was a victory for the defenders, yet proof that the siege was alive and deadly. History remembers kings and generals, but sieges are lived by ordinary people. Isabel de la Fuente, a widow, kept a journal. She wrote of the dread before each convoy, the joy when sails appeared, the despair when storms hid the horizon. Francisco Perez, a stonemason turned soldier, spent years repairing breaches. "Every stone I place is another day my children live," he once told an officer. He died of illness in 1715. His apprentice continued the work. For Moroccan soldiers in the trenches, life was equally unrelenting. Some spent years staring at the same walls, their children growing up knowing nothing. But war, merchants, wives, and families followed the camp. Generations lived and died under canvas with Ceuta on the horizon. After nearly 2 decades, Spain organized a massive relief convoy. 24 ships, thousands of fresh troops. Food and powder enough for months. As they approached, Moroccan batteries thundered. Spanish warships replied with broadsides. The harbor became a frenzy of unloading soldiers, sailors, and civilians working shoulder to shoulder under fire. The relief not only replenished the city, it broke the creeping fear that Madrid might one day abandon it. By the 1710s, the siege had become an environment, not an event. Children who had grown up under cannon fire now raised children of their own. Ceuta's markets, churches, and homes carried on always under bombardment, always under the shadow of the camps. There was a strange pride in endurance. Every supply fleet that broke through was celebrated like a holy day. Families tossed flowers from balconies as sailors hauled grain ashore. For the Moroccans, the siege had outlived its cause. But it continued, fueled by the Sultan's obsession. In 1720, Spain struck back with a counteroffensive, reclaiming ground the Moroccans had held for decades. New fortifications rose, making any renewed assault far more costly. Then, in 1727, Sultan Moulay Ismail died. His successors, embroiled in succession struggles, could no longer justify the manpower and cost. The Moroccan army withdrew. For the first time in 21 years, the hills fell silent. The trenches emptied. The banners disappeared. Ceuta's gates opened to a horizon free of enemy fire. Most sieges are measured in days, weeks, or months. Even the great ones, Vienna, Constantinople, rarely lasted more than a year or two. Ceuta endured for 2 decades. Generations lived entire lives behind its walls. Children were born, raised, and married without knowing peace. Commanders died, kings died, sultans died. But Ceuta stood. It was not a victory of conquest or glory. It was a victory of endurance. 21 years. A lifetime of waiting behind walls. For Ceuta, the siege was not just a battle. It was the air they breathed, the ground beneath their feet, the sky above their heads. When the camps finally emptied, the people stepped into a horizon they had not seen in a generation. The city was battered, its stones scarred, but it still stood. And so did those who had lived their lives in its shadow. History rarely remembers battles without parades. But here, on the rocky edge of Africa, a city proved that survival itself can be the greatest victory of all.